What are my thoughts about Superhuman? First thought is it's about bloody time he did something. No.
I'm leaving.
It's about time he got off his butt and did it. No. My first thought about this is that it's welcome. You know, Martin's a musician who's played on a lot of people's scores. He's done his own records, but this one I think is most personal to him since I've known him, which is about 20 years. So I know him a long time, and he's played on a lot of my scores, a lot of Hans Zimmer scores. He's made a lot of other people's music sound good, and so I think it was time that he paid great attention to his own music and made that sound as good as it does. So I think it's a very personal thing for Martin, and that's why I was really, really happy to be supportive of it.
He talks a lot about his influences being you and Hans.
Mm.
Do you hear any of those influences on this?
Well, no, I don't know that Martin takes any musical influence from me. I'd be very flattered if he did, but we're good at encouraging each other. You know, normally when I'm at the beginning of a score, which I am at the moment, just starting off on a Ridley Scott film, one of my first phone calls is to Martin, which I've already made actually a couple of days ago, and he's going to come play tomorrow. So I have some rough ideas about what I want to do, but he's going to bring to it his personality and his musicianship. So that's what he's made. He's spent many years doing that for other people's music. So I think it's great that he's bringing that care and attention to his own project. And obviously you know the background of Superhuman and Eva's plight and fight against MS. And you know, I'm a great friend of Martin. So obviously I love Eva. I also love Martin. I hope I'm supportive of him as a guy, as a human being, and for both of them. So I think Superhuman needed to be done. Well, I think probably the way that he's pulled in collaborators from all over the place. I think years of being one of those people has probably taught him that that there are people out there who can wave their magic wand over his music and make things happen, because that's what he's done for a lot of people, as I've said. So, you know, it's no surprise to me that these people who have a very high standard are willing to play and give their time. It's very exciting. Yeah, and I think this is a great idea to expand the original idea of Superhuman into something that, you know, so that he can tour and that a lot of people can enjoy. And I don't see any reason why, because the project will involve samplers, synths, keyboards, guitars, drums, but it will involve orchestras and symphonies. Why it shouldn't be something that one can bring to big cities with decent orchestras and decent concert halls, and involve the people who live there. That, you know, in an educational way. I'm sure there's a way to do that.
Can you tell me what Superhuman means to you?
It has meant to me, looking at Martin and Eva, something that they've kind of done together. I mean, in many ways, because Eva has the disease and Martin's tried to do what he can do about it. He's not a doctor, unfortunately. I know this. He's definitely not a doctor. But what is he? He's a musician, so what can he do? So he's done this album and dedicated to Eva. And I think when he started it, it was clear, it was very personal, and it was for Eva and for them. But as it's grown and become a real musical event, I think it's grown out of its boots a bit, and it needs to be shown around the place. And people I think will be able to relate to the story behind it.
Thinking about Eva and Martin and the struggle that they've been through for so long.
Yeah.
The concept of Superhuman, from his description to us, is that it's about the raw heart. It's about coming from where you are, where you begin, the most secret inside part of yourself that is sometimes the most painful part of yourself, and bringing that out in the music. Do you find that there is something lacking in the music that's coming along that this may be addressing, that this may be the answer to maybe something that we've been needing for some time, that open heart?
Well, I think perhaps the fact that the project relates very personally to people and the journey that they're going on, because let's face it, it's an ongoing thing. You know, Eva has not stopped tirelessly searching the world for someone who can help her get better. So that's not off the table, that's right there, front on the table. And that's what we all hope for, and that's what she's chasing. Oh shit, I've forgotten the question now.
Do you feel that in music this is something
okay,
that we could be?
So I think that people do perhaps yearn for something that's really connected to humanity emotionally. And Superhuman is that. It is a story of two people and their very different struggles and how they're going to get through it. Maybe music these days can be a little impersonal and can be knocked out of, you know, dance music particularly, sort of factories and the use of kind of recipes to make this rather tasteless music sometimes. I don't think overall I would agree with that, but sometimes I think music today can, and art can be lacking a creative personal touch, which I don't think this does. I think it comes straight from the heart.
And coming straight from the heart, it is the hope that through touring with Superhuman, there would be sort of an outreach to the youth, that there would be, for the youth coming up in age are not really focused on Bach and Beethoven anymore. They're not focused on going to the old town halls with the old architecture. They're interested in the dance music. They're interested in the movies. And it's the hope that this can bring a connection.
Yeah, I think Superhuman can fill a particular space with the fact that it molds these different genres of music, and it's not frightened to do that. And I think, you know, 20 or 30 years ago, I think having dance rhythms and symphony together, I think people were doing it, but I don't think we'd do it very successfully. And I think people weren't really ready for that. But I think the time is right for that now, and I do truly believe that. I mean, I think it must be, with an illness like this, like MS, I think it must be quite devastatingly lonely sometimes, because there appears to be very little help available. So I think if we you know, seeing a project that is born out of these difficult times for Martin and Eva, but is actually hopeful, I think that could provide the hope for people who don't perhaps have it.
That's our hope too.
Maybe we could get you to say as many compliments about Martin as possible.
Tell us
If it
about
doesn't
Martin.
Okay, give it back.
We'll switch the topic to Martin.
Um,
Tell us how long you've worked with Martin.
Well, I've known Martin about 20 years. We had a really great friendship from the first time that he played on one of the first scores I did when I came to America, so it was probably in about 1996 or something like that. And he did what I said that he could do earlier, which is he made a fairly ordinary piece of music sound quite good, and that was part of a score I was doing at the time. So had he screwed that up, I'm sure I would never have bothered being his friend. No, we became friends and collaborators because you know, as I say, he played on many scores now. I mean, 50 or 60 scores of mine, and he's always my first thought. I wonder what Martin could bring to this. So it is truly about time, and it's very gratifying for me to think that Martin has this chance to push his own music forward, because he's done a lot of playing on other people's music, which has brought him to this point. And no doubt there are various influences here and there, but I think that's what's fun about this. And I've known him long enough to know that one of his desires is to tour and to play live. He's really good at it, and he likes it. He loves it, and people like it when he does it. I mean, I've been a great supporter of Superhuman on many levels, and not least on the level of Martin getting to do what he'd like to do.
Can you tell me what you find superhuman in Martin?
What I find superhuman in Martin? Well, I'll tell you what I find superhuman in Eva. Well, actually, you know what I did? I mean, the first time I met Eva, or one of the first times, obviously through Martin, when he brought her to Los Angeles, she became my tennis coach and just whipped me each time I played her. She's very strong, incredibly competitive, which she still is, both those things. But physically, she got around the tennis court pretty damn well. and she pummeled me into submission, I think. I remember Martin played with me that day and then had to take a very long break afterwards. Yeah, what I think Martin and Eva are a unique team, but they were before this happened anyhow. So I like to think of that, and that they may return to that, because when I first knew them, there was no MS. There was nothing going on like that, and Eva was an extremely athletic, fit person. She's all the things that she used to be right now. She just physically isn't able to do a lot of the things that she could.
Did you notice a change in Martin when Eva's illness set in?
Yeah, of course. Martin, you know, I think he checked his lifestyle and his obligations. He, for ages, didn't have a home studio or anything like that. That wasn't his thing. He would go out to, in a way, he was doing his mini dream, which is to go out and play, but to people's studios like this, for instance. And I think, you know, with Eva needing more of his attention at home, he's, you know, that was one of the many things that he was able to do, is say, okay, I want to bring my work home. Because Superhuman was entirely composed in his backyard, which you've probably seen. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's brought great joy to both of them. And actually, it's where a lot of composers and producers and singers and songwriters have come to nowadays. Instead of having, you know, having these flashy big buildings, to have smaller spaces that are more personal and at home. You're in my home studio right now.
Do you find that having a home studio and having that closer human connection versus what it used to be with the big studios has changed the music? Has changed
I don't know whether it's changed the music, but it definitely has changed the way one approaches one's day as a composer. I mean, I know Martin's the same. You know, the fact that he can, with Eva within reach, he can be creating and know that she's just there. It's a major thing. For my part, I have 5 children, so you probably hear them in the background at some stage. But they know not to scurry up these steps.
I saw the pacifier on the banister.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we will have our different reasons for wanting to be within reach of our family. But I mean, I think the fundamental thing is that we want to do that so that we can be available. But you know, has it changed the music? No, I don't think so. Probably it's the same thing. I do feel it's quite a modern thing to want to have a studio at home, as Martin and I both do. I don't think it was something that happened before.
So Eva's illness may have actually been a small blessing in disguise.
Well, there are actually, you'd be surprised. Over the years, there have been many small blessings in disguise. I'm sure that we'd switch any of them for Eva to be fully well again. But you know, Eva and Martin have always been very hospitable people. I should think the last dinner party I went to at Martin and Eva's house was probably 2 weeks ago, and it was possibly the 89th, maybe the 91st. They're very hospitable people. And not that they weren't before, but since Eva's not going anywhere right now, people have got to come to her, and that's what we do. We do that very often, so that's been really lovely.
What do you find inspiring about Martin?
I find we share a certain enthusiasm, cheeky enthusiasm for the task, and he doesn't take things too seriously. You know, he'll show up and I'll be in my studio for a session with me on I don't know, The Martian or whatever it was, the last one we did together. You know, and I'm probably in a bundle of nerves, and I've got Sir Ridley Scott about to arrive to listen to music, and just his very presence calms me down, because you know, there's something more important going on at home in Eva than me. And even before Eva's sickness, he was a very calming influence in the studio, because you know, he loves music. He loves playing. I mean, to be honest, you know, the fact that we do this and get paid to do it, it's pretty ridiculous, really, because all we're doing is making stuff up. I mean, you could call it composing if you like, but I just make music up. I don't see myself as any Mozart here. And I don't think Martin thinks himself that way either. I think we've found a little place within the music business to have some fun, earn a living, and hopefully make some good music.
Thank you.
Cool.
Do I need to say anything more directly about Superhuman?
That would be lovely.
I very much can. I don't know what I can say, but
Well, maybe could you speak to the music itself? I
Mhm.
mean, the pieces are quite lovely. He did.
Mhm.
We spoke earlier today about. I keep forgetting the title of the song.
yeah. Well, I might be forgetting titles of songs because they're more complicated than the songs themselves.
I
But
feel a lot better about it then that you. The Invisible
I called
Shield.
it track number 3 or...
Yeah, track number 3. Like the Invisible Shield, I asked him about that because it is very sort of, it's very building. We talked a lot about Bolero today and how that's an inspiration for him. Ravel's work in general, but Bolero specifically.
Well, I've at various points along as I've watched and encouraged Martin with his project, you know, I still think fundamentally what makes it, puts it, you know, in a category of its own and sets it aside is the fact that it has him front and center. You know, left to him, his devices, he'd probably be somewhere back left corner, but actually center stage is where he needs to be, because I think the cello is such a ravishing instrument and he plays it so well. And, you know, he actually plays other instruments well as well. So, you know, I'm encouraging him to broaden what he plays during the gig, you know, during the show of Superhuman, and I think he will. And he can. And, you know, the other instrumentalists are hand-picked and really good at what they do. But Martin's, you know, the vivacity of him playing the cello and is quite unique, I think. I mean, people play the cello, but not like him.
That's true.
No.
Great deal of passion there.
Mhm.
Where do you think that passion comes from?
Probably from his mother, possibly from his father, but I happen to know that his mother did sleep up a tree once. So anybody who can do that, yeah, and who can bring up Tillman to be a decent gentleman, yeah. Well, you know, what can I say? He comes from, he grew up in a music school on the top of a hill in Switzerland, you know. So the guy wasn't going to take up soccer or something like that. It was going to be music. And I think the cello was thrust at him. And he probably rebelled against it in his teens, like we all did, but came back to it, circled back to it. And, you know, actually the very first time I saw Martin, we had already met, but it was under very difficult circumstances. I think I was conducting one of the Hans Zimmer scores at one of the big studios here with a big orchestra, and he was, you know, I think there were 14 cellos and 30 violins and a lot of violas and all the rest of it, but one of the celli, way back there, was Martin. And I thought, oh, well, I know him. I didn't really know anybody in Hollywood then. So I think we connected in one of the tea breaks, because, by the way, they have tea breaks here. In London they have beer breaks, but here you have a tea break, or a coffee break. So we connected, and it turned out that that was going to be the last session that he did in an orchestral setting. That he was, you know, he had been, you know, he had been a member of the session orchestra here, playing on lots of scores, which is a very noble thing to do. And there's some wonderful players who do that. But for him, it wasn't really giving him what he wanted. And I think after that, he had to break away from that orchestra and say, okay, well, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to put an amplifier in my cello and see what I can do from there. So his path it took a big old right-hand turn then, about the time that we met. Maybe he probably started his electric sojourn a little before we met, but he was still pretty fresh to it when we, not the cello playing, but the electric cello playing, when we met. That's why when he played on, I forget which score it was a lovely little thriller, I think. Yeah. Right. When we met on the first film that I hired him on, you know, he was still very fresh to it, and but he displays the same enthusiasm today as he did then.
What do you think is different between him and the studio players?
I don't know. Whatever it was he was doing wasn't quite enough for him. I think he had to explore the cello a little further. Oh, I know. Actually, I do know the answer to that question. All that I've said already is true, but this is truer. I think he's an old rock and roll dude. I mean, he belongs in a band, not in an orchestra. And what's he going to do? He's not going to relearn the guitar or something like that. He's going to use the cello. And that's why I think Superhuman, you know, it should be a good night out to go and see it, because it is Martin and his band, really. You know, and it's not, although the symphony may be involved, at heart, it's, you know, it's rock, really, and dance, yeah.
Do you think you're going to see a lot more kids picking up the electric cello after?
I wouldn't be surprised. I know he played at my wedding, for God's sake. And I remember, yeah, everybody was really distracted at this amazing electric cello playing going on. I'm like, for God's sake, we're over here. Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think kids would be really intrigued by the fact that it can cross over from this wonderful acoustic sound. You might be playing a Bach, you know, a Bach piece, or this raw sound that it can get through the, you know, his electric stuff. And I think they'll be intrigued that there's a hybrid there to be had.
So we could see a new future in music education.
Yeah. Now, it wouldn't surprise me. And actually, my own background is in music education. I am a teacher. I'm pretending to be a composer at the moment, but I actually was a teacher and probably still should be. But frankly, I think Martin would be very suited to sharing his gifts with kids. And I think with the symphony involved, I can imagine how that could work.
So I have a specific question. We'll still frame it from you, but we talk about how, or Eva talks about how she asked him to write something happy.
Yeah.
And then when she first heard it, it was like, oh, this is actually really good. And then he brought friends over and they're like, oh, this is really good. You can keep going. Can you speak to when you first heard it and what your thoughts were?
Well, actually, when I first heard it, I had to learn it, or learn some of it, because one of the first, I don't know whether Martin and Eva have told you about this, but one of the first manifestations of Superhuman was specifically a charity event that Martin wanted me to come and play keyboards on, which I did. It was in New York, so we all busted over to New York, and he had the raw bones of Superhuman. It's actually become something slightly different, but that night we were playing in front of I don't know, about 400 rather wealthy New York sort of entrepreneurs who were there to raise money for a specific doctor who Eva wanted to get treatment from. A really, really brilliant doctor. Martin, what was his name?
Dr. Sadiq.
Yeah, Dr. Sadiq of New York. And he's utterly brilliant and actually gave Eva a lot of hope for about a year in the fact that he might take her on. And he really thought he could stop the onset of this disease. I'm not sure what the outcome of that was. I mean, he was the real thing. He was an amazing guy, and he actually agreed to take Eva on for no money. I think. I mean, the cost of these things are astronomical. I mean, I think we were all ready to raise money if we had to, but he took them on. And I think Martin just said to him in one of these appointments that they had, "What can I do for you?" And he's like, "Well, we're having our annual fundraising thing. You say you've got a band or you've got a record, come and play. You can be the, you know, the musical interlude." So we all bailed over to New York. We didn't quite know what to expect. And the music was pretty raw at that stage. Some of the songs that we played that night survived and are on the record in a different manifestation. They all came up rather a lot once the really good players started playing on, and once Martin focused his attention on where the project was going to go. But you know, a lot of these things often have a place where they start and they kind of not sure where they're moving to until whew, you suddenly see, okay, that's where we need to be musically. And I hasten to add that it was as soon as he dropped the keyboard player that it really started coming together. But it's very sad that, but it's quite true. So we did, yeah, we played that gig, and then we let loose in New York, I think, as I remember it, afterwards. But it was great. It was for a really good cause, and it shows you how you know, these sort of events that Martin and Eva have made happen. You know, she's not been sitting around doing nothing. Eva has been tried every single avenue to find a way of going forward, and Martin's been so supportive of that, and Superhuman's been born out of that.
You might have
Oh, I was just going to say specifically to the music, how was that crowd's reaction, or how was your
okay,
reaction?
fine. Okay, yeah, no, my initial reaction to it was that I loved it. I could see there was a lot of potential there. As I say, these were germs of ideas, And I think Martin felt comfortable letting it loose on this particular audience who weren't too critical yet. And he, you know, he hadn't got in and really fleshed out these pieces or had any of these wonderful musicians play on it or produced the record as well as he did ultimately. So these were germs of ideas that he went in and yeah, the audience, well, we weren't quite sure they were going to react. They're rather kind of elderly and rather quiet at first. And then there was a lot of excitement as the music started, and they couldn't get enough of it towards the end. Yeah, we were very concerned when we were standing off stage. We thought, oh God, should we just run? But no, we went on. I think I might have had to kick him on. And on we went and we did our thing. They really liked it. And I could tell then that there was going to be something would happen with this project.
How do you feel about what Patrick was saying was that Eva asked for a happy song?
Yeah. Well, of course she did. Why would she? She's not a woman who's full of self-pity. Why did she ask for a happy song? Well, many reasons. Because Martin's probably naturally, like a lot of composers, like myself, turns out very moribund, sad, depressing music normally. So I think Eva, she probably got in there first, said, look, if you're going to do something, just bring it up a bit. Yeah. Make me smile. So I really appreciated that, and I was quite unexpected. So when he told me he was writing a project that was inspired by Eva's illness, I could only imagine it was going to be kind of devastating. And by the way, he could write that record as well, but I'm glad he didn't. I think we're all glad he didn't, but he actually could. That would come very naturally to him. But you know, sad music is one thing, but this is out and out happy. But it's complex as well, so I mean it has many layers. Like Shrek said to Donkey, an ogre's like an onion, it has lots of layers, and to get to know it you've got to peel away the layers. So I think this is very, very similar.
You peeled away the layers of Martin, and what did you find?
A really good friend.